The first thing I noticed was her purse. It was sitting on the kitchen table, wide open, lipstick cap off, half a granola bar, her ID poking out, and a receipt from a place I'd never heard of, Lark, Rooftop and Lounge. The timestamp read 11:42 p.m. My dinner was still in the oven, untouched, burnt beyond recognition. The apartment smelled like charcoal and rosemary, which is the kind of irony that makes you want to scream into a pillow until your throat bleeds. No text, no call, nothing. Just her purse, left behind like an afterthought. I went to bed that night not out of fatigue, but out of defeat. The kind where you lie perfectly still and let the silence pin you to the mattress. At 2:37 a.m., a car pulled up. Headlights lit up the ceiling through the bedroom blinds like some unholy interrogation. Then silence. No door opening. No footsteps. No key in the lock. She didn't come in. She just sat out there. I knew it because I got up and peeked. Her silhouette behind the wheel. Frozen. I watched her for 11 minutes. Then the engine rumbled again, and she drove away. The next morning, she returned. Not with coffee. Not with excuses. But with nothing. No makeup. No words. No energy. She knocked once, softly, like a kid afraid of the monster behind the door. When I opened it, she was holding a plastic bag with a single apple inside. Just one. A green one. Granny Smith. I blinked. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. And then I noticed it. Her wrist. A faint red mark that looked suspiciously like a handprint. Not mine. She knew I saw it. Her eyes told me everything she wouldn't say. She reached toward her purse on the table, but stopped halfway and looked at me. Still mute. Still trembling. Still trying to figure out if she was going to lie or beg. I didn't speak either. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I knew, finally, that I was no longer the man she came home to. I was the man she came to explain herself to. And she didn't have the words. When she finally stepped into the apartment, she didn't even shut the door behind her. It just stayed slightly open, letting in a draft that made the silence feel colder than it already was. She held the plastic bag like it was evidence in a trial she didn't know she was about to lose. I didn't say anything. I just walked back to the kitchen and sat down at the table across from her purse, arms crossed, heart pounding like a bass drum in an empty hall. She stayed by the door, as if the floor in front of her might collapse if she took one more step. The apple rolled slightly in the bag, making the quiet even worse. Then she finally broke it, barely. I didn't mean for it to be that late, she said, her voice brittle, like dry glass on tile. We just went for one drink. Her tone wasn't apologetic. It was hollow, scripted, like she was reciting something she had practiced in the rearview mirror 20 times, but still didn't believe. I tilted my head and looked at her. Then why were you still out past 2 a.m.? Why sit outside without coming in? Why not answer your phone? No response. I stood up slowly, walked over to the door, and closed it quietly behind her. She flinched at the sound. That's when I saw it again, the faint red outline on her wrist. And then, as she instinctively tried to hide it, her sleeve slipped up and revealed a second mark near her elbow. Longer, horizontal, fresh. My chest tightened. Not from rage, yet, but from dread. Who were you with? I asked. Not yelling. Just, flat. Like my voice belonged to someone else. She opened her mouth, closed it, then sat on the edge of the couch like someone expecting to be punished. She put the bag with the apple on the coffee table and just stared at it. It was Kayla's birthday. You remember her, right? She said quietly. I remember you saying you didn't want to go, that you'd rather stay in with me, that you were exhausted from work. She looked down. Yeah, I lied. I nodded. I could feel the heat rise in my ears, but I kept still. And who was there? I asked. She didn't answer, so I kept going. Because that receipt in your purse, Lark Rooftop and Lounge, that's not some random dive bar. It's $8.17, a drink place. You don't end up there by accident. She fidgeted. I continued, slowly. And the handprint on your wrist. Was that Kayla too? Nothing. Just shallow breathing. The kind you do right before you either confess or collapse. I didn't cheat, she finally said. But it didn't come out as a statement. It came out like a question. And the silence that followed her words said everything she couldn't. So I sat back down, right across from her. I didn't ask anything else. I just watched her break, slowly, silently, under the weight of everything she refused to say. And as I stared at that single green apple on the table, still sealed in a bag like a peace offering, I wondered, was that supposed to fix it? A piece of fruit? Or was it the only thing she could afford to give after giving someone else everything else? I didn't touch the apple. I left it there on the table for the entire day, watching it wrinkle in the sunlight like it was aging in fast forward. Rowena sat in the same spot for most of the morning, barely speaking. She scrolled her phone aimlessly, locked and unlocked it, deleted messages. I saw her do it. Not obviously, but enough for me to notice. Every flick of her thumb looked like a tiny betrayal. And I didn't stop her. I wanted to see what she'd do when she thought I wasn't looking. By noon, she had the nerve to ask if I wanted anything from the diner down the block. As if things were back to normal. As if all she'd done was miss a dinner and forget to say goodnight. I just told her no without making eye contact. She left, finally, after pretending to straighten the already straight cushions and mumbling something about needing air. The second the door shut behind her, I went for the purse. Not out of curiosity, but out of survival. Because if she wasn't going to give me the truth, I was going to drag it into the light myself. I pulled out the receipt. Lark Rooftop and Lounge. One item was scribbled out with pen. I held it under the light and tilted it, trying to see the indentation behind the ink. I took a pencil and gently rubbed the side of the lead across the area. Classic trick. It worked better than I thought. 2 items. Dancing Ember, $16. Basil Halo, $15. Bar Tab Transfer, Table 17, $76. Server, Zayden. Zayden. Who the hell has a name like that? And why would someone transfer a bar tab onto her ticket? I searched the bar's website. Found the number. Called and asked if Table 17 from last night's receipts belonged to a group or a reservation. The woman on the phone, maybe not used to hearing tired, polite voices instead of drunk, belligerent ones, was surprisingly helpful. Oh yeah, she said. That was a group of 5. Bachelor party crew, I think. There was a brunette with them. She was the only girl. Real pretty. Left her scarf in the bathroom. You know her? My heart sank. I could have hung up. I should have. But I asked the next question anyway. Was she with one of them? Like, together? There was a pause. And then a sigh. I don't like to gossip, but I saw her kissing one of the guys near the elevator. Don't know if it meant anything. People do that kind of thing all the time here. I thanked her and hung up. My hand was shaking. Kissing. Near the elevator. Bachelor party. She wasn't even supposed to know anyone in that group. I sat there with her receipt in one hand and that stupid apple in the other, like I had to pick between reality and the lie she gave me. Like those 2 objects somehow represented the 2 people I was trying to reconcile. The woman who used to dance barefoot in our kitchen, and the woman who now kissed strangers in dimly lit rooftop bars under names she didn't even want me to hear. When she came back 30 minutes later with a to-go coffee and that fake innocent energy, I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I asked, "What table were you at last night?" She blinked, then smiled weakly. We didn't have a table. We just stood near the bar. I nodded slowly. Cool. I folded the receipt quietly and slid it into my back pocket. She didn't notice. And in that moment, I knew I had to go deeper. Not for revenge. Not even for closure. But because something in her eyes told me this wasn't the first time. And it damn sure wasn't going to be the last. I couldn't sleep that night. Not because of nightmares, but because of the reality that sat across the apartment from me. Folding laundry like she hadn't rewritten the rules of our relationship with a single night out. She hummed quietly, out of tune. A nervous habit. One she didn't even realize she was doing. I just watched. Not like a husband. Not like a partner. Like a stranger who'd stumbled into someone else's movie and had no idea what scene he was in. I waited until she went to the bedroom. Waited until the sound machine came on, the one she uses to drown out her own thoughts. Then I opened my laptop. It didn't take long. Turns out, Zayden wasn't hard to find. The bar's website had staff photos. He looked like the kind of guy who sells fake watches out of a gym locker and still gets tipped 30% because of his jawline. His Instagram was public. I scrolled fast, scanning for familiar faces, searching for clues like a man who didn't want confirmation but already knew what he'd find. Then I saw her. In the background of a story highlight labeled Friday's Fire. Not the main subject. Just behind a group shot. Her head tilted, laughing, eyes half-lidded. And beside her, a man in a red button-up with one arm resting casually on the small of her back. Not full-on holding her. Just enough to make it intimate. Just enough to be a threat. I screen captured it. My stomach turned. Then I messaged him. Didn't think he'd respond. But I crafted it carefully. Hey Zayden. Sorry if this is random. You were our server Friday night at Lark. There was a tab transfer on our receipt from table 17, and I think my girlfriend got mixed up in something. I'm not looking for drama, just clarity. Did anything happen that night? I expected silence. What I got was worse. He responded 10 minutes later. Yeah man, sorry. I remember her. Tall brunette. White lace top. Came in with one girl, but ended up sitting with a bachelor group. Was kind of wild. I don't want to stir things, but she was definitely vibing with the groom's cousin or something. They were making out in the hallway for a minute before they left in his lift. I didn't think she was taken. I stared at the message for a long time. Reread it 4, 5 times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because my brain refused to let it be real. She left with him. Not just a kiss. Not just drunken flirting. She went home with someone else. In his car. Probably laughing. Probably forgetting all about the man who made her dinner, who washed her stupid favorite throw blanket that morning, who vacuumed dog hair out of her side of the couch, because Casper always sheds more on my half. And the worst part? She chose it. Not by accident. Not because she got too drunk. Not because she lost track of time. She made that call with a clear head. I wanted to throw the laptop. Wanted to scream, or cry, or break something. But all I did was sit there in the dark like some pathetic mannequin, hands trembling, heart hollowed out like someone had scooped it out with a rusted spoon. I saved the message. Took another screenshot. Labeled the folder. Truth. The next morning, she woke up early, showered, put on fresh makeup, and asked me if I wanted to go to brunch. She smiled like a woman with nothing to confess. She touched my shoulder like she hadn't just deleted part of my soul. I looked her in the eyes and said, sure, let's eat. Because now it wasn't about catching her. Now it was about letting her talk, letting her dig. And when the hole was deep enough, I was going to bury the whole damn lie right inside it. We went to a place she liked. One of those modern, overpriced brunch spots with avocado on everything and music that's just loud enough to keep you from having honest conversations. Rowena looked radiant in the sunlight. Not in a romantic way, just well composed. That kind of polished exterior you build when you know you have to keep your story straight. She wore light makeup, her hair braided over one shoulder, and a cardigan I'd never seen before. Probably his. I watched her stir her iced latte like it held some kind of moral truth. When the waiter came, she ordered confidently, smiled too much, thanked him by name. I ordered black coffee and let her do all the talking. The usual topics. Work. Kayla's crazy night. The terrible DJ. I listened like I was learning about a life I wasn't part of, because in a way, I wasn't. She paused when the food arrived. I think she expected me to interrupt, to start in on what I knew. But I didn't. I let her carry the weight of the silence. After her third bite of toast, she finally said it. I know I messed up not telling you I was going out. I felt like I needed a night to breathe, you know? I nodded, sipped my coffee, watched her squirm. I didn't plan to be out that late, she continued. Kayla begged me. I wasn't going to drink, but then we met some guys and, well, not like that, but you know how people are. There it was. The seed. I leaned back. What guys? She looked up too quickly. Just some guys from Kayla's work, I think. I didn't really talk to them. I stirred my coffee, mirroring her. You sure? Your receipt says you had someone else's bar tab on yours. $76 is a lot for 2 cocktails. Her eyes flickered. A tiny glitch in her face. But she smiled through it. Oh, yeah. I think one of them said he didn't have his card or something. I don't know. It was loud. I nodded slowly. Was it loud when you left with him? Her fork froze. Midair. Her breath hitched for a millisecond. I didn't leave with anyone. Lie number 1. I pulled out my phone. Opened the message from Zayden. Set it down beside her plate without saying a word. She read it once. Then again. Then stared at the screen like it had betrayed her. I didn't yell. Didn't move. I just waited. Her mouth opened, closed. Her hands trembled as she pushed the phone away. That's not how it happened. Then how did it happen? Her voice was smaller now. I was drunk. He offered me a ride. Nothing else. I passed out. That's it. You kissed him near the elevator. Who said that? I just looked at her. She blinked. Swallowed. Looked out the window like the truth might be waiting for her in traffic. I didn't sleep with him, she whispered. I leaned forward. Did you mean to? She didn't answer. That was louder than anything she could have said. The table between us felt like a cliff edge. Two people sitting inches apart, but miles away. Her eyes were wet now. Not sobbing. Not apologizing. Just unraveling. You weren't supposed to find out, she said softly. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. But it did mean something. Not the kiss. Not the ride. Not even the fact that she let a stranger put his hands on her while I waited at home with a home-cooked dinner getting cold. What meant something? What wrecked me? Was how easily she built the lie. How naturally it came out of her mouth. How she would have let me go on thinking everything was fine if I hadn't looked. If I hadn't cared enough to dig. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it back before she touched me. And then I said the one thing I'd been holding in for days. I'm not angry that you went out. I'm angry that you erased me while you were gone. And just like that, for the first time since this all began, she had nothing left to say. We didn't speak on the drive home. The silence wasn't hostile, it was surgical. The kind that slices through all the surface-level noise and leaves you with nothing but the raw, pulsing center of what's really broken. Rowena stared out the passenger window, blinking too often, biting the corner of her lip until it turned pale. I kept my eyes on the road, not because I needed to focus, but because I couldn't stand the way she looked so small in that seat. Not guilty, not devastated, just cornered. Back at the apartment, she didn't even kick off her shoes. She stood in the living room like a guest who wasn't sure she belonged there anymore. I walked past her, tossed my keys in the bowl near the door, and sat down on the edge of the couch, the same couch I'd scrubbed down the day she went to that party. I stared at the TV, blank screen reflecting both of us. Two distorted shapes in the dark. She broke the silence first. Not with a speech. Just 4 words. There's something else, Linden. I didn't flinch. Figured. She moved toward me slowly, like every step needed permission. Then she sat across from me on the arm of the recliner, elbows on her knees, hands clasped tightly like she was trying to hold herself together. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time since all of this began, she wasn't performing. I didn't go to that party for Kayla. I waited. I went because he invited me. The guy in the red shirt. I didn't say anything. I met him 2 weeks ago, at the gym, she said. He works at the front desk. I'd seen him a few times, and I don't know. We talked once when my key fob wasn't working. It was nothing at first. Then we talked again. Then he complimented my shoes. Then he asked if I wanted to come to this private thing at a rooftop bar. I told him I was taken. He said, "So what?" I told him no. I swear I told him no. "But you still showed up," I said. She nodded. "Yeah, I did." Why? That's when she broke. Not dramatically. Not theatrically. Her voice didn't crack. She didn't sob or fall to the floor or beg. Her hands just started trembling slightly, and her stare drifted off somewhere over my shoulder. Because I wanted to remember what it felt like to be wanted by someone who didn't know me yet. Someone who didn't see all my patterns. Someone who didn't know I steal covers or forget to pay parking tickets, or that I get weirdly quiet after I see pictures of my mom. She looked back at me, eyes glossy. I wanted to feel brand new again. I'm not proud of that. I just needed it for a night. I never planned to cross a line. I laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that doesn't sound human. "But you did." She nodded. "I know. So what now?" I asked, but it wasn't really a question. It was more like a dare. A final test to see if she still had anything honest left in her. "I don't know," she said. "I don't know what I expect from you. I don't even know what I expect from myself." We sat in silence again, but this time it wasn't surgical, it was radioactive. Thick. Dangerous. She had told me the truth, or at least a version of it, and I still didn't feel like I had closure. Instead, I just felt exposed. Like all the things I had believed about her, about us, had been quietly rewritten while I wasn't looking. She stood up slowly, as if unsure whether she was allowed to. "I think I should stay at Kayla's tonight." I nodded, not because I agreed, but because there was nothing left to protect. She grabbed a bag from the hall closet, not hers. One of those canvas grocery totes we used for road trips. She filled it with a few clothes, her phone charger, and a makeup pouch. She didn't cry. She didn't say goodbye. She just turned the doorknob, paused for half a second, and left. When the door clicked shut behind her, I didn't move. Not for minutes. Maybe hours. I just sat there, listening to the air hum through the vents, wondering if the worst part was that she'd betrayed me, or that she did it for the feeling of being someone else. After she left, the silence in the apartment wasn't just quiet, it was oppressive, like a pressure on my chest that made even blinking feel like effort. I didn't move for a long time. The sun had shifted across the living room floor, falling in a warm rectangle that stretched toward the door like it was trying to follow her. But she was gone, probably at Kayla's, probably pretending to be the victim in a story she wrote herself. Eventually, I noticed the canvas tote still leaning against the shoe rack. At first, I thought she left it for effect, one last breadcrumb trail of guilt. But when I peeked inside and saw how randomly packed it was, half a hoodie, mismatched socks, one sandal, I realized she'd just forgotten it. She left in a rush. Not because she was sad, because she was scrambling. I sat on the floor next to it and pulled things out slowly, not like I was searching, but like I was peeling apart the inside of her head. And that's when I found it, wedged in a side pocket like it had been stuffed there without thought. Her journal. Small, old, soft leather, the spine nearly broken from years of bending. I hadn't seen it in ages. I didn't even know she still kept it. My first instinct was to put it down, walk away, but she'd already crossed the line. She made decisions that tore the fabric between us, and I was done respecting the version of her that no longer existed. I opened it slowly, and right away I recognized the way her thoughts spilled across the page. She wrote like she was confessing to someone who could never interrupt. The first entry I read was dated just days before the party, and what I found wasn't explosive, it was surgical. A slow dissection of our life. A quiet unraveling, line by line. She wrote that I made her feel like she was living in a loop, that our routines felt more like rituals, that I didn't see her anymore, only the outline of who she used to be. She said she hated how I always asked if she was okay, in the exact same tone, like checking a box. She resented how quickly I accepted her short answers, how I never pushed when she pulled away. But it was this one line that broke something in me. I think I stopped being in love with him the moment he stopped being curious about me. I sat with that for a while, longer than I should have. I wanted to argue with it, wanted to scream that it wasn't fair, that I had been curious, that I had asked her how her day was, noticed her moods, made her tea when she was quiet. But it didn't matter. If she believed it, it was already true in her version of reality. She wasn't trying to fall out of love. She was documenting the process like an autopsy. And then I turned the page. That's where it got worse. She had written about him. The guy from the gym. She didn't name him, just called him the red shirt. She described the way he looked at her, how it felt like being 22 again, before responsibility and commitment calcified around her. She said she liked that he didn't know what her laugh sounded like when it was forced. She liked that he didn't know her patterns. That with him, she could be spontaneous instead of predictable. She could be mystery again. The worst line came near the bottom, almost scribbled like she was trying to bury it, but couldn't stop her hand. With him, I feel like I can exist without apology. I closed the journal slowly, careful not to damage it. Then I placed it on the counter, sat back on the floor, and let it hit me. Not just the betrayal, but the finality of it. She had already left me long before that night at the rooftop bar. What happened there was just the first time she stopped hiding it. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. What I felt wasn't rage, it was gravity. Like the weight of what she'd done pulled the air out of the room, and all I could do was sit inside the vacuum and breathe whatever was left. I stayed on the floor for over an hour. Casper eventually wandered out from the bedroom and laid beside me, his chin on my thigh, completely unaware that the woman who used to sneak him pieces of chicken under the table wasn't just gone. She'd been absent for a long, long time. And that night, I didn't wait for her to come back. I just locked the door and deleted her contact. Because I knew the next time she knocked, she wouldn't be visiting someone who loved her. She'd be facing someone who finally saw her clearly. It had been 5 days since she left. 5 days of quiet mornings, uninterrupted thoughts, and rediscovering what it meant to live without walking on eggshells. The apartment no longer felt haunted. The scent of her shampoo had faded from the bathroom. The throw blanket she used to hog was folded neatly on the arm of the couch. Casper stopped waiting by the door. And so did I. I didn't expect her to come back. Not really. I thought maybe I'd get a text someday. Something hollow like, "Hope you're doing okay," or "Can we talk?" But not a knock. Not a face-to-face. Yet there she was, Thursday afternoon, standing in the same spot she stood the day after the party, holding herself together with nervous hands and tired eyes. But this time, I wasn't afraid to open the door. She didn't say hello. She just looked down at the canvas tote in my hand, packed neatly this time, waiting for her. "I came to get my things," she said, barely louder than a whisper. I figured. I replied, and handed her the bag. She reached for it, but then paused. Her eyes scanned my face like she was looking for a scar she'd left behind. But there wasn't one. Not anymore. I read the journal. I said, "No venom. No shame. Just truth." She nodded slowly, like she already knew. "I'm not angry anymore," I continued. "I was. But not now. I think we both knew this wasn't working. You just had the courage, or the recklessness, to act on it first." "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, voice trembling. "You did anyway. But here's the thing. Sometimes breaking something is what makes room for something better. For both of us." She blinked fast, tears forming but not falling. "I don't know who I am anymore." "That's okay," I said, with more peace than I thought I could carry. "You're not mine to fix, and I'm not yours to lose anymore." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The weight that used to hang between us, the fear, the guilt, the blame, it was gone, replaced by something quieter, something cleaner. Acceptance. She reached out suddenly, not for a hug, not for a kiss, but for my hand. Just a gentle squeeze. Grateful. Final. "I'm sorry," she said again. And this time, I believed her. Then she turned and walked away, not dramatically, not broken, just free. I closed the door softly behind her. I stood in the middle of my quiet apartment, took a deep breath, and realized something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. Not because she was gone, but because I was still here. Whole. Breathing. Healing. That night, I took Casper for a long walk under clear skies. I passed by the cafe I used to avoid and stopped in for coffee. I smiled at the barista. She smiled back. It wasn't a moment. It wasn't some fate-written connection. It was just nice. And for the first time in months, I looked in the mirror and didn't feel like a man who had been left behind. I felt like a man who had finally started moving forward.